Barry. Whoops, sorry.
Barry's enthusiastic.
Yeah.
I like it.
Hello, Barry. What's your story?
I am Barry Joseph. Do you want to know who I am first?
I'd love to know your name. Yes.
I'm Barry Joseph. By day, I work in the education department down the block at the American Museum of Natural History. But at night, I'm putting the finishing touches on my upcoming book, Seltzertopia, The Effervescent Age. But before we start,
yes,
I have to send out a hi to my kids who are listening at home. Please, kids, please ignore everything you just heard about masturbating and vigorous chip dipping. But seriously,
they know.
But don't you? And don't you think if they don't, that this is a great way to learn?
No, he's got them on a steady diet of kids' menus.
I do have to share, though, I am embarrassed that I once took my mother-in-law, who I love dearly, out to dinner to a gas station in Brooklyn.
I'm telling you, this gas station stuff, it's got legs.
But I'm proud, I am proud that I have never, ever had seltzer at Hooters. I'm looking at you, Sean.
All right, so Barry, the name of your forthcoming book is what?
Seltzertopia.
Seltzertopia, which connotes that you're pro-seltzer. Are you perhaps in the pocket of Big Seltzer? Or are you?
I often keep a small seltzer in my back pocket.
Well, not the answer I was looking for. You approached seltzer out of pure intellectual curiosity or historical curiosity?
Seltzer is fascinating. Yeah. Would you like me to tell you something I think you don't know about
seltzer?
seltzer?
I think there's probably a lot we all don't know about seltzer. So
let's start here. The first seltzer machine was designed in the 1770s for the British Navy to fight scurvy.
I did know that. Yeah, that one I know. The first seltzer machine, you say?
That's right. It was made. Do you know who made it? Joseph Priestley, who you might know as the scientist who discovered oxygen. But for me, he's the man who created seltzer, artificial seltzer.
Right, because oxygen we could do without, but seltzer.
That's right. He happened to live next to a brewery, and he was fascinated by seeing what happened with the fermentation above the vats and what would happen if he would bring a bowl of water back and forth and seeing how it got carbonated. He took that back into his lab.
Wait a second. Explain. Yep. Okay, so was beer carbonated at the time?
Well, when you have the fermentation of the beer, you have the carbon dioxide above the vat. And so by putting the water through the gas, he was able to, what he would say, impregnate the water with the CO2.
Here we go, the spiral.
That was his language.
So when we think about the relationship between chips and beer today, that's like a whole sexual cornucopia of history.
I don't want to go there.
Can you explain the science part of capturing the carbonation in a bowl?
The technique was actually rather simple, and it's amazing that it took us so long to figure it out. If you are able to move the water back and forth through the carbon dioxide, it, under pressure, will stay inside once you cork it.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
there you go.
So he took carbonation from the beer vats?
Well, he learned that it was possible to somehow move the gas into the water. Okay. And once he did that, he had this notion that maybe it would prevent scurvy. He knew that people drank, they took the waters when they went to spas, it made them healthy. Scurvy, if you have it, you're not so healthy. Maybe if you drank something that replicated in his lab, that kind of liquid, it would make you healthy.
And what is scurvy exactly?
Scurvy is a disease if you don't have enough citrus. Bad things happen.
Yeah,
if you know that,
vitamin C and B you were supposed to take, right, for scurvy?
And so citrus can provide that. It turns out citrus, however, is not in seltzer.
But when you say it like that, if you have enough citrus and you don't have scurvy, if you knew that, why do you need to invent seltzer?
Because back in 1770, they didn't know that.
And
so people were trying to figure out, what can we do? And he just happened to be having dinner with the head of the British Navy and suggested to him, I think I just invented something that will keep our Navy men alive.
And what made him think that carbonated water, seltzer, would be a cure?
Well, for hundreds of years, people left the cities to try and get away from polluted water supplies and get to natural bubbling water that was coming out of the ground, often filled with minerals, which when people drank it, sometimes they were healthy because they were just getting away from the cities, or sometimes there was some medicinal properties in those minerals that helped them feel better. And because they didn't know exactly why it was, they didn't have the science we had today, it was a general sense that these kind of waters must be good. So if we can recreate them and offer them to people in cities, people must be better.
It's fascinating. I had a kidney stone, a lot of kidney stones in my early 20s, and the doctor said, drink a lot of water, obviously. There's the doctor I want to see again. But I drank natural sparkling water, Bad Dois, and that's the brand. And turned out it had a ton of sodium in it, dehydrated me worse. So
Don't go back to that, doctor.
I'm thinking like very bitterly that I could have just been drinking seltzer, and I would probably have. But I mean, I don't really understand how we know. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is how sort of convoluted it is what source we get what liquid from when we're talking about water, sparkling or flat, right?
Yeah.
Like just PWS on a bottle means public water source, right? I mean, you ever just read the bottle of water to see what things mean on them? What is seltzer exactly? When people say, can I have a club soda, can I have a seltzer, can I have a sparkling water? Do you feel like we even understand those basic nuances?
We don't, and it's such a great question. It's one of the things I take up in the book. But let's start with the word itself. Where does the word seltzer come from? Seltzer comes from a little town in Germany called Niederselters. And seltzers itself means salty waters. And what do you think Nieder means? I actually don't know. I think it means come drink some. And it was just one of the many spas that dotted Europe. But they, like many of the other spas, figured out how to get that seltzer into a jug. The entire town, that's all they did. They took care of people who wanted to be in the water and sell that water. And those jugs going around Europe and then around the world took their town of their name, Niederselters, and eventually we now know it as seltzer.
Okay, so this was pre-Priestley, I gather.
That's right.
Seltzer, right? So Priestley invented a machine to make seltzer,
That's
right?
right.
It didn't have to be natural, sparkling, bubbling, whatever, right? And then he persuaded the British Navy that it would cure scurvy.
Unfortunately, yes.
And did it?
Well, we can all presume it didn't, but what he did do was write it up. And that write-up, then he shared with the world. And there was a German Swiss manufacturer in Switzerland who happened to read it and get an idea that he can create a business around this. He moved to England, opened his company. We all know it now as Schweppes.
No kidding. Now, knowing maybe a little bit more.
That's right.
Knowing maybe a little bit more now about nutrition science than we did then, although probably honestly not that much more. What do we know about the health benefits or costs of carbonation?
When you say the health costs.
Yeah. How is it good and bad for you?
Well, in my community, the Jewish community, we love to drink it. We have the phrase greps, which is about burping. You eat that rich food, you drink some seltzer, it's going to help you process it, help you digest it. My dad was a doctor growing up, and he'd always recommend drinking some soda because of the carbonation if your stomach wasn't feeling well.
Was he the guy that Alex went to about kidney stones?
Well, he was a pediatrician. I don't know how old she was at the time, so.
Those were the cake years. Let's not confuse the kidney stone years. Really?
Wow.
Really?
Damn, baby. I just have to comment. I feel like I've been reading a lot about having the acidity or balance of acidity in your system for weight loss versus alkaline and acidity, and that sparkling beverages of all kinds are actually not good, and that they contribute to weight gain. How do you feel about that?
I think you should write that chapter in my books. I don't know much about that.
I mean, because I love sparkling water and seltzer, and I love champagne.
Hey, can I ask, first of all, do you ever cook with, is carbonated water ever an ingredient and/or don't?
Sure.
So what do you use it for?
I don't cook with carbonated water per se, but I will say that cooking with champagne, in particular sparkling wine, as opposed to just flat wine, it definitely has different tastes. I think that champagne really has, or sparkling wine has a lot of really yeasty notes and layers that are really cool depending on what you pair them with. I also worked with a chef who got so mad, we made risotto for like 300 people, which is one of the reasons I hate risotto. And he took a giant Jeroboam of 1969 Veuve Clicquot Rosé and dumped the whole thing in the risotto to kind of fix it and balance it. The risotto was pink. But it was so delicious.
Well, people use seltzer all the time when they make things. My mother-in-law, of course, when she makes her matzo balls, she's going to use seltzer when she prepares it.
In restaurants, do you use seltzer or club soda to clean up? Isn't that like a natural for wiping down tables so that it gets rid of gunk without chemicals? Or no?
That's like making it rain Benjamins at the club, you know what I mean?
No, I don't.
We're going to go with something cheaper.
Yeah.
We'll go with the cleaning products and stuff.
Oh, really? Cleaning products cost less than seltzer?
I would definitely say seltzer
Really?
out of a gun, so to speak, or in the bottles. Yes, but you could. Yes, I have.
So Barry Joseph Priestley, while discovering oxygen and doing all this, I mean, he was an amazing scientist and philosopher, et cetera, right? He has a seltzer machine. He sells it to the Navy, And how long did they use it for, and what were the effects?
We know that it went out on 2 ships. We don't know what happened to those ships. I'm assuming they came back, but I don't think they put in any more orders for additional seltzer machines. So that part of the seltzer story ends, but it moves on with folks like Schweppes, who move on to start making seltzer a business. First as something that could be sold by itself, and then something you could mix with lemon, mix with ginger, and start making sodas and the syrups we'd see in the 19th century. After the Civil War, if you want to hear more about it, after the Civil War, the seltzer and soda industry went from dozens of bottlers to thousands, and interest then peaked around the turn of the 19th century. And
so when was or is peak seltzer?
So around 1900, 1910, but then it was just down, 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 decade after decade after decade until the 1970s. And then this little mineral water from France came to America and changed everything, Perrier. That turned everything around. And interest in seltzer then began to go up and up until we're at where we are today, which I think is the most popular period for seltzer in American history.
Really? Per capita or just total?
In the United States. In fact, I can give you some sales numbers. 64% is how much seltzer has grown in the last 8 years, and half of that growth is just in the last 2.
Now let me ask you this. Alex has been talking about all kinds of foods tonight.
I literally have a can of Perrier in my bag.
Nice.
Pink grapefruit, yeah.
Flavoring. So Alex has been talking about cooking with all different kinds of things, including champagne and risotto. I'm curious, some foods and beverages are so beloved that they inspire songs or poems. I'm guessing seltzer is too prosaic for that.
Seltzer has been the muse to many. And if I can share with you, would you like to hear a little poem?
I'd love to hear it.
This is a poem from 1884. This is from the National Bottlers Gazette. I don't know if anyone still reads it. It is still around today with a new name. It was organized by William B. Keller, who actually was the one who brought together the entire bottling industry into one community through his one publication. So this was printed in 1884 by Anonymous. I assume it was him. It's called Ode to Soda Water. This is just an excerpt. Concoction, beautiful, inimitable, by every girl art thou assimilated, in quantities unparalleled, illimitable, while man's finances become abbreviated.
Sean Malmstrom, the invention of the seltzer machine. Joseph Priestley, what more can you tell us?
I just want to state for the record, because this is a podcast, that Barry is wearing a seltzer t-shirt as well that says peace, love, and fizz on the back. And Pittsburgh Seltzer Works on it. But thank you.
130-year-old seltzer business in Pittsburgh.
I want to ask about your special underwear. So I found out something incredible about Mr. Priestley. I don't know if he's related to Jason, but it's that apparently he was like really good friends with the Earl of Sandwich, who is often credited with inventing the sandwich as we know it, which is the fact that seltzer and sandwich came out of the same friendship is remarkable. And instead of writing that book, I think you should get to work on that screenplay, like ASAP. Because I would watch that movie.
Thank you, Sean, and Barry, Joseph, thanks so much for coming. Great job.